Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign.
I am very happy with the JD pick. I think it's transformative for sure. And think of him as a member version of what we do.
Okay, so I think that the Vance doth protest too much. They don't look, Vance and Trump, they don't want the campaign to be connected to Project 2025 anymore because it hurts them, because people have looked into it and they know that it's insane. Previously, oh my God, they were going on podcasts talking about how awesome it was. Donald Trump was literally saying that they are creating the groundwork of our second term. But now all of a sudden we got nothing to do with them, even though Vance loves the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 love Vance, and we're finding out even more about how much they love each other.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
In addition to writing the intro to the Heritage Foundation director's book, JD Vance also provided some of the work that went with this package of essays that they had put out. And we want to give you the details of that. So back in 2017, the Heritage Foundation had a report, Mourning Declining Fertility, Premarital Sex, IVF, and the Welfare State. JD Vance wrote the introduction to that as well. And so he called the volume admirable in his introduction. It's basically the ideological underpinning of a lot of what would become Project 2025. And he was, as far back as 2017, writing the intro for it. So what's in these essays? Well, they included articles suggesting that ideally abortion would eventually become unthinkable. Not just illegal, but unthinkable. And amid growing restrictions on access to the procedure, as well as a peace-slamming fertility treatments for luring women into thinking it was acceptable to have children later in life, which he was fine with this. He doesn't like the idea that you should be able to have kids late in life, even though he thinks you're only a citizen if you have kids. So basically, you're 14, 15 years old. What are you waiting for? Get in there. You're not doing this when you're 35 or 38 or whatever. Those don't count, and we're gonna block you from doing it. You need to have them now. But in addition to that, other articles lament porn, so you can't have pornography, premarital sex as well. Sex is to produce children between 14 and 19. That's it. You don't have it outside of the context of procreation. You don't have it after that. It's icky and we don't like it, but you have it to have kids, okay? And a whole bunch of other nonsense. Obviously, there's wildly homophobic stuff in there. The only real family is a heterosexual family. It has to be a two-parent family. And they literally encourage women to start becoming pregnant at younger ages, which fits in, culturally with their war against women. And so Vance is now, they're doing some damage control, implying that he's no longer rabidly against IVF or whatever because the politics don't look good. Yeah, write that down, and that you can console yourself with that when they outlaw the procedure during their second term. But Sharon, what do you make of this?
Can we hook him up to a lie detector just for fun? I know it's not admissible or anything. This guy, it's just so ludicrous. Why would anyone believe this? I told you about me being a guest on a radio show, and the woman called in, the caller, and yelled at me like, why are you mentioning 2025 and Donald Trump and the ticket? They don't have anything to do with it. He said he didn't have anything to do with it because it's moronic to believe them. This guy is just married to Project 2025. That's his baby. And I don't understand why anyone would believe anything out of their mouths. I don't even understand why the mainstream media is treating it like a flip-flop. It's just an outright lie. They're lying again.
Yeah, and by the way, the only small reason why I don't even like focusing on Project 2025 on one level is, like, it's the same reason why it's useful for a lot of people to understand what the Republicans do. Because why do we have to be like, look at this 900-page document that says a bunch of crazy things. Oh my God, this is what they're gonna do? As if they're pretending to be moderate. And then we find out secretly they're gonna do all these crazy things. There's nothing in Project 2025 that reads as outside of what Donald Trump would ever have advocated for. It's not some wild new radical plan. It's basically, they just took Donald Trump's speeches, made them a little bit coherent, and put it into a PDF. I mean, that's what it is. So it is good to be able to point to it and be like, this is what they believe, but that's what they've always believed. So that bothers me a little bit. And the final point I want to make, and give me your thoughts. I read some thread, I think, on Threads about JD Vance. And the thing that I think is so interesting about him and kind of like guys like Ted Cruz, not so much Ted Cruz. Like we should all acknowledge that misogyny is not one thing. It doesn't come in one form. Donald Trump, for instance, is sort of the stereotypical over the top kind of misogyny that you've seen in other forms throughout your life. This is a guy that believes that women are only valuable if they're hot or whatever. He's gonna try to grab them and he's gonna try to kiss them. And he talks constantly about their looks and he's constantly cheating on his wife and all that stuff. JD Vance is arguably more misogynistic, but not at all in that way. JD Vance has like an anti-sexual view of women. It is a very like robotic. I mean, look, the religion I think is a big part of this view that women's value is don't go get a job or whatever. I mean, I guess my wife can have one for a little bit. I can't stop her, but I would prefer if she didn't. Have a bunch of kids and then get out of my face. Like, I'm not saying that men like Trump like women. I think they deeply are suspicious of and envious of women and feel entitled to them. But there's something about women that, I don't know, interests them and makes them like toxic or whatever. JD Vance seems utterly disinterested in femininity or whatever, in a weird way, like a robotic way that I don't get. And Ted Cruz occasionally has. Ted Cruz also sometimes talks about hot vampire women in leather or whatever. So he has a little bit of the Donald Trump stuff too. But it's just so strange. And I don't want either of those type of misogynists being in power or whatever, but it is interesting when you have those two types coming together. Anyway, any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, and it's something that I have I'll call it a loose mutual friend because, they were friends in politics until they weren't. And I've asked my friend these questions about JD because something's not adding up to me and I have thoughts on it. And I'm not gonna, for once, I'm gonna shut my trap about it, but I do have some deep thoughts about it. And I think if we really were to get the truth and dive in, they'd be scientific. What we're seeing is a case study. He doesn't like women, but perhaps he has an affinity for the female gender in some kind of weird way. And I don't mean to just regurgitate the word weird, but I'm telling you, I believe I have a theory on what's going on with him. And I don't know because he flip-flops so much and he goes back and forth into this nonsense that he wants women to not work. Because until 10 seconds before he was the VP on the Republican ticket as the nominee, she was working, okay?
Yeah.
She was working at a high level. So I don't really know what he believes, but I think he is internally troubled. And I actually mean that. I'm not trying to be insulting to him. There's something going on that he's got to get out. And I hope that one day in the future, he feels empowered enough to get it out. He'll stop hurting people when he does. He'll stop hurting people, whatever it is.
Well, we'll see. I mean, at a certain point, I no longer care about his mental well-being or whatever. But for me, it reads, and I'll close on this. He's like you watch a movie of like a king 500 years ago in England or whatever. That just give me a wife for like, I don't know. I need it for like an alliance, and I need to have kids because I need to have heirs, and it's important that I look like I have a family. But I'm not interested in any of that stuff. I want power. I want to be in charge. I want to invade. It feels like that to me. Like he is so obviously ambitious and corrupt and desperately wants money and desperately wants power that like the rest of it, it's like a nice pair of shoes. He has to have nice shoes, like he has to have a family. That's what it feels like. And so he hyper focuses on it as a symbolic thing. When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?